Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live stream. So this is unusual, and it's unusual because we don't normally do the Q&A at 11 o'clock on a Thursday morning. We're normally doing this at 4 o'clock on the second Thursday of every month. But we missed one because a week ago today was our fall showcase, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So often we come into this with, I've got a project I want to show you. I've got a technique I want to show you. This is not the case. This is open Q&A. So if you have Q's, I will do my best to provide A's and hopefully get that all to work out and meet in the middle someplace. Now let's go back to what was cooking a week ago. So a week ago today at 3:30, we did our fall showcase. And here's the deal with this. It's a pretty cool event. When COVID hit, there's a huge woodworking show every other year called IWF down in Atlanta. And the year COVID hit, IWF got canceled. So we hatched the idea of I've been at IWF every year since 1998. And then the alternate show, the years it's not IWF, it's AWFS in Las Vegas. So I've been going to those two shows every year since 1998. The show got canceled. We got the idea of let's make our own show. Let's bring the show to you rather than us go to the show. So we got some really cool products, new products that would normally have been rolled out at IWF, manufacturers sent here. And then we talk about them. I show what they do. So last Thursday was our fifth or sixth one, maybe. I've lost count. But it's myself and Paul Mayer, and we had 7 different products that we talked about. So if you didn't see it, all the live streams are always archived. So you can go back and you can look at that at your leisure. And then it's a great way, watch for those showcases. We typically do them twice a year, spring and fall. And watch for them because it's a great way just to see what cool new stuff. Paul and I are both tool geeks, tool junkies, whatever you want to call it, both. So it's a great way for you to see what we're discovering in the world of new tools and new products, cool new stuff. So anyway, our event was a week ago today. We didn't do the live Q&A. So here we are today. So I know that there are a couple of questions sitting here already. So Kevin asks, what are some ways to make a curved riser for a stair, 180-degree curve? I don't know what a 180-degree. If you mean a half round, like a half circle, what would help more would be to know, is it a circle that's this big or is it a circle that's this big? Tighter the radius, the harder it is to bend wood to that. So I've never done it, but just applying what I know about woodworking to this. One way people bend wood is by steaming it. And once it's been in the steam bath, then you can bend it over a form. And from what I have seen, I have not done this, but from what I have seen, it's pretty amazing how thick a chunk of stock can be bent and to what extent it can be bent once it's been properly steamed. So what is properly steamed? I don't know, because I've never done it. The bottom line would be you make a form. And then a lot of times the forms are two-sided. So you bring the object down on that and then you press, you've got kind of an innie and an outie and you sandwich the material in between the two. That means having some kind of a steam chamber that you can put it in. Another way to bend stuff to end up with a curved result is maybe a little bit more user-friendly, and that is by resawing material thin. So what you would want to know is generally a riser it's a long time since I did construction, 6 inches, 6.5 inches, right? Somewhere around there, 8 inches. So you'd rip your material to width. You would then resaw it and send it through a planer or a surface sander, a drum sander, until it's thin enough to make the bend that you want to make. So if that means that you had a drum sand it down to 1/4 inch, but you want a 3/4 inch thick riser, you need 3 layers. So what you would do then is you make a form, just like with steam bending. You make a form, you take layer number 1, you put it on there, you apply glue over the face, layer number 2, glue, layer number 3, you clamp the heck out of it, and you force it down against that mold, against the form, and then you let the glue dry. There's always some amount of spring back, whether you're steam bending or glue laminate, like I'm talking about here. There's always going to be some amount of spring back. There's probably stuff on the interwebs that can tell you this material, this radius, anticipate this much spring back. It's going to probably take some experimentation on your part to figure out, to get all this right. But that would be at least as well. So then another way, and this, we just did an article on this, Woodshop Mike just did an article on this for us. Another way to bend material is kerf bending. And this might, now that I think about it, this might be the best approach on a riser, because a riser is not really a structural part of the stairway. It's just preventing dust from going into the stair jacks. So I don't know if that article is actually published or not. I only proofed it 2 or 3 weeks ago. But with kerf bending, what you do is you cut kerf after kerf after kerf after kerf, not going all the way through the material. And by relieving what would then be the back of the riser, then you can introduce a bend to it. So again, a lot of this is going to depend on what kind of a bend you're trying to hit, what kind of a radius you're trying to hit on, from what it sounds like here, a semicircle. But kerf bending could be an answer for you. In Mike's case, what he needed to do was he kerfed the back of the material and then it bent this way. So he opened the kerfs, and then he filled those kerfs in order to have it hold that curve. But anyway, if the article is published, read the article. He talks about how close he had a cut to the face in order to get it to make that bend. So there you go. Three different approaches. When I first read the question, I was going to say, I have no idea. And I'm glad I thought about it for a billionth of a second. Sorry, I'm way under caffeinated today, so you're going to watch me drink coffee. Can you please explain how to cut blanks out from a burl with proper grain direction for bowl and spindle turning? I've got a Grizzly 14-inch bandsaw I love. I've got a 3/4 inch, again, Laguna Resaw King pan saw blade. I recently had to take the blade off for a project, I think it means off for a project. When I got it back on, I cannot cut straight when resawing. Let me just read here. And then there's another question, same guy. It's probably a drift issue. So I think you've got I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 questions going in here. So one, I saw this question for a billionth of a second before we went live. So with burls and grain direction, burls are weird. And there's an it depends here. So a lot of times you'll see just a tree trunk with a burl, like a wart, sticking out the side of it. In my experience, in those cases, the insides of those burls just look weird. In other words, like there is no distinct grain direction like there would be in a piece of plain sawn or quarter sawn material. So show and tell, or visual aids. This chunk, I think this burl was one that was just growing out the side of a tree and then got chainsawed off when the tree came down. So with one like this, I'm pretty confident that if we cut into this and look at the even off a chainsaw, look at the curl you can see right there. This is going to be amazing inside. I'm pretty sure if we cut into this, it would just look like all mixed up. There wouldn't be any distinct grain direction. So for me, when I'm processing a burl that's like this, it was just a wart on the outside of the tree, I don't pay particular attention to grain. I just cut it like this chunk. I would probably just put on the lathe just like this, you know what I mean? Like that's a bowl blank right there. This is the back of the bowl. This is the front of the bowl. Good to go. Spindle work, I don't think I would care which way from this I cut a spindle blank. This other chunk is a little bit different. This I cut up just in the last couple weeks. So this one, I think you can see, is in this case, this was the tree trunk. Whoop, gotta be up here. This was the tree trunk. And then it was burled, it was growthed out this side. Is that a verb? And it was growthed out this side. So this one, certainly here, has a lot more distinct vertical grain direction than the other one did. And on this one, I would pay more attention to the standard rules of the road with bowl turning, which is when you're turning bowls, you're typically turning into face grain. When you're spindle turning, you're cutting perpendicular to the long grain. So I would cut spindle blanks this way, and like this would be my bowl blank, so that I'm cutting into this face to create a bowl. Just because it's cool, so I can show you. I also brought this one, and I cut all these with a chainsaw, freehand. But look at how amazing that is. This particular one, I cut this a number of years ago, maybe 10 years ago. I didn't cut it into slabs. I got the burl 10 years ago. I didn't cut it into slabs until 2 weeks ago. It's a tiny bit punky. It's a tiny bit soft. So one of the things I have in my shop that I haven't messed with yet is cactus juice and a vacuum chamber. The way that works is you get the material into the vacuum chamber, you fill it with this cactus juice, you introduce a vacuum. When you do that, that gets the cactus juice all the way saturated in the material. It stabilizes it. So there are a couple things neat with that. If you just leave it clear, you're introducing the cactus juice and making that wood where I could use it. Like right now, it's pretty soft. I wouldn't want to make a knife handle or a bowl out of it because it wouldn't hold up. Once I treat it with that cactus juice, that'll stabilize it to where I can use it. You can also dye the cactus juice, so I could use that to introduce color. And because of the vacuum chamber, it completely saturates the material. So if the face of that is green, it's going to be green all the way through because you've completely saturated the material. So that whole process, I need to learn more about it. A friend of mine, Chris Lyons, he's done some work for WWGOA. He does it all the time. So I'm going to try to get him to come here and do a video on it, from which I will steal as many ideas as I possibly can. Oh, and then that same question, there was a saw blade aspect to it. So if resawing isn't going well, typically it is, the blade is dull. You said it's not. You don't have enough tension on it, or you've got a drift issue. And if you're using a fence, you haven't done a drift compensation with the fence in order to allow the blade to do what it's got to do. So one, check and make sure it's sharp. Two, make sure you got the right tension on it. And then if need be, do a drift compensation. And I'm going to anticipate the next question. Alex Snodgrass says you don't have to do drift compensation. And that's true. And I know Alex, he's a great guy. He really knows what he's doing. In my experience with my bandsaw, I need to do drift compensation. So take that for what it's worth. Your mileage may vary. All right, Jerome asks, how to rip 8-foot long, 2-inch thick by 8-inch wide hard maple boards. Well, I'm not sure of the pregunta. I'm not sure of the question here. If it were me, I would rip them on a table saw. And I don't know what you're trying to make from these boards. Most table saws have a 3-inch maximum cut capacity. So if they're 2 inches thick, you'd be able to do that. If you have another pair of hands, you can get into the shop. That would be helpful. When I'm by myself, I work alone. So for me, I do, on something that long and heavy, I would do in-feed support and out-feed support. I've always got out-feed support on the table saw. The out-feed table is always there. If I'm doing something like that, that's going to be prone, I mean, that board is going to be heavy, then I would also have something on the in-feed side so that it's holding it and I'm not trying to just muscle that board up while I'm feeding it through. So if that's the question, how to basically how to handle the board so it's not tipping all over the place, that's what you need, is something table saw height, both in feed and out feed, so that you're not trying to hold the board up. It's just resting on that, and all you have to do is feed it. Jim asks about lumber storage. I have a rack for dimensional lumber. What's the best way to store plywood, 1/4 to 3/4? Should it stand along the wall or keep it laying flat? I have a couple lever clamps on the wall to hold 4x4 sheets upright. These would be in the garage all year round. So yeah, it's, I think in the perfect world, if you, like when I was production manager of a cabinet shop, we had all of our sheet goods horizontal in racks. Good work if you can get it, because it's every 4x8 sheet is 32 square feet. So it burns up a boatload of space storing stuff horizontally. At both my old shop and this shop, I've stored stuff vertically. I opened my old shop in '98. So whatever the math is, I've been storing my sheet stock vertically for that many years. So in the garage out here, I've got a vertical rack I can slide sheets into. One of the things I'm uber meticulous about is when I say I'm storing them vertically, I am storing them vertically. So I never give them the opportunity to get to start leaning a little bit. And like a 3/4 inch sheet could maybe, contact here, start a little bit of a lean. And over time, it's going to also then start to bow. So I make sure that those parts are all the sheets are always in the rack, dead vertical. And at the rate at which I consume stuff, I'm not bringing in 30 sheets that take me a year to consume. I'm bringing in 2 or 3 that take me a month or 2 to consume. Just going right up against the wall is a great way to go because it takes, so for me, I'm taking up 4 feet of floor space because if I'm facing the rack, the sheets, of course, are 4 feet wide. So they're pushed in this way, like books on a library shelf. They're pushed in this way. And then I think the rack out here is 5 feet long. So I'm consuming a lot of space with that, but I have the space, so it works. If you can just stand the sheets against the wall, same deal, keep them as truly vertical as you can. It's just with that, like if you have an 8-foot sheet pushed into the corner, you got to also have 8 feet in front of it so you can slide it out this way to get to it. And it's, I would find it a little bit more awkward to whatever. There's a melamine, an MDF, a red oak plywood, a strand board, or whatever. And to leaf through all of those and slide out what I want and then get all the other stuff pushed back to true vertical, I would find that harder to do. I know that magazines, I'm going to say Family Handyman magazine, I think, maybe Wood magazine also have done storage racks in that design where stuff pushes in from the end, but the whole rack is also on wheels. So when you need to bring a sheet out, you can pivot it away from the wall, slide out the 8-foot sheet, pivot the whole thing back against the wall so that it's just so it's easier to get sheets in and out. So, so bottom line is I think horizontal is best if you can do it. Sheet's got to be well supported so it doesn't introduce a sag. And then if you are going to stand them up vertically like me or on their long edge, which I think is what you're describing, just make sure they really stay vertical so that they're not doing this and you're going to start to put a bow in that sheet. William says the live Q&A with the Titebond guy was great. Oh, so William, you left this comment. Whenever we did a live, which I appreciate because I hadn't thought of this, but it's a great idea. So what William is saying, I've read it and I haven't told you what he's suggesting. We get a water-based finish person here like we had the Titebond guy here. So I actually had this conversation this week with Aquacoat as a water-based finish I use. So I talked to the guy at Aquacoat earlier. We're working out details. So Max, who's behind the scenes running the live, more information coming your way, Max, but this isn't like next month. This will be months down the road. But basically I'm hoping we can do a water-based finish hour-long Q&A, just like we did the glue-specific hour-long Q&A. But we'll sort out the details. Watch your emails, and you'll know when I know. Peter says, I have an older Craftsman jointer planer, 6-inch, has nicks in the blades, requiring new blades. I cannot get the old blades off. Any suggestions? Oh, man, that's tough. So I'm going to assume you have visited the usual suspects like, WD-40 is one, but there's another brand I really like, and now I can't remember the name. A rust-busting aerosol. Somebody's going to think of it and put it in the comments for me. Also in an aerosol can, it's a yellow and white can, and it is like Rust Buster or something like that. But my recommendation is you got to saturate those jack screws, the gib screws, with a rust busting something, and then be really careful to not strip those tiny, a lot of times they're just little like 5/16 hex nuts in there. Be really, really careful to use a good wrench so it's a great fit on there, and just keep working it. I know in the mechanics world, spinning a wrench on a car, heat is often the next choice. I would be hesitant about that because I think, of course, the joiner head is on bearings. And if you get too much heat on there, maybe you're going to toast the bearings in the thing. I would be very hesitant to apply heat. I would try to do this chemically. Michael says Superzilla, I haven't heard of that, is a great rust buster. So there you go. There's another option. But yeah, I think you really got to get some silk on that thing, on the nuts, and just keep working on it. Richard says, what is the best way to cut 1/4-inch polycarbonate? I tried the bandsaw, which was okay, except it spews plastic dust on the top side of the cut, and the surface finish isn't great. We have got this covered. It's a video clip we shot relatively recently, so I'm not sure it has posted yet, but I do it on the table saw. And let me grab the blade. I cut polycarbonate on the table saw all the time with just a 80-tooth crosscut blade. So this is an alternate top bevel. It's a Freud, it's in their Diablo family. Part of what, with the bandsaw and the table saw, with a fine-tooth blade, you're going to get a really good cut quality. You want to be careful you don't go too fine or feed too slowly, because you can get heat, and it's weird. I've seen this on a bandsaw more so than a table saw, where the kerf you just created melts back together behind the blade because you're using too fine a tooth blade on the bandsaw. So yeah, I would far and away use a table saw over a bandsaw in order to cut polycarbonate, and it works great. Herb is making a countertop out of 10-year-old dried walnut, 1 inch thick. Boards are 7 to 10 inches wide. Overall size of the top is 50 by 74. There will be no sink or cooktop. Would you rip the boards to a narrower width like 5 or 4? We'll be gluing together using biscuits. Would you put plywood under the walnut to aid in the attachment to the cabinets and the island? So let's do the last part first. 1 inch thick, 50 inches wide. So I don't think you need plywood under the walnut to aid in attachment. You need supports in the cabinets to support the countertop. 1 inch is pretty thin for a 50-inch wide. I'm reading again. 1 inch is pretty thin for a 50-inch wide countertop. Not that there's any like rule for this. Just intuitively, I think you're pretty thin. And is it you're 1 inch in the rough and it's going to end up 3/4 inch after they're surfaced, or you're going to finish at 1 inch? A lot of questions there. I have got my kitchen table is a full 4/4 thick. It was 1 1/4 inch material when I started, 36 inches wide, 72 inches long, and supported by the 4 rails on the table. You know, it's a standard leg to rail assembly on the kitchen table. That's fine. You're talking about 14 inches more than that. If you have sufficient webs in the cabinet underneath, I think you'd be okay. Going back to the first question, I would probably rip them narrower. 7 to 10 inches wide feels wide to me. Maybe so that, you know, any board has a propensity to cup. If it's this wide and it cups 10%, then it's a way more visible. It's a way more obvious cup. If it's this wide and it cups 10%, it's a way less obvious cup. So yeah, I'd rip them down to narrower widths before you glue them up. And I think you just have a better likelihood of keeping the whole thing flat. And then of course, a 50-inch wide, you'd have to look up the numbers for walnut, but 50-inch air dried from the driest time of winter to the most humid time of summer, I would say that thing is going to change with, it wouldn't surprise me if it changes with a 1/2 inch or more seasonally. Air dried lumber moves more than kiln dried lumber does, and movement is lineal. So if it's, I don't know what it is, let's say if it's an 1/8 inch per foot and you're 4 feet wide, that's 4/8. That's a 1/2 inch of movement. So whatever you choose to do to fasten it to your cabinets, you're going to have to allow for that movement. And it'll be finished at 1 inch. So yeah, all of that, everything I said, I think applies to that. Mark asks, if I'm using finished wood S4S, do I need to have a planer? Yeah, maybe. Yes and no, sort of, kind of. If you need me to send you home with a note that says you need a planer, I'm happy to do it. When I first opened my shop in '98, I had a bandsaw, a jointer. I did not have a planer. So my workaround for that, the reason I mentioned a bandsaw, is when I needed thinner stuff, I would resaw it, and I would use a portable belt sander to take off the bandsaw marks and give me what I needed. Now, I wasn't looking for a billion lineal feet of 1/2 inch drawer box parts. There was a piece or two that I needed every once in a while. So that method worked okay for me. Even, if it's surfaced 2 sides, S4S, or surfaced 4 sides in that case, what you will find is that the planer that a big shop uses, the planer that the supplier I get my hardwoods from uses, does not cut as nicely as the planer I have here. So as a result, I get my stuff either S2S 13/16 or maybe hit or miss at 7/8. And the reason for that is to leave room for me to clean it up more once I have it here. Because I know my planer and also my Supermax will do a much better job than their equipment of leaving a good surface, so I have less sanding to do. Good surface being like you'll probably see scallops, ripples in the face that came from their big industrial planer. So you don't have to have one. It's maybe a function of how much time do you want to spend with a random orbit sander or a belt sander in your hand cleaning that material up. And then also a function of, do you ever need 1/2-inch stock? And if you're starting with 3/4 and you want to end up with 1/2-inch, that would be a lot of belt sanding. So a planer has a great function, but like I said, for me, I worked around it. I worked around without it for a long time. Herb says, thank you, no problem. He always uses Titebond glue because they support the live streams, and I appreciate that. I neglected to mention when we started, wrong side. Thanks, as always, to Titebond. And, of course, when we did the gluing Q&A, Titebond sent Titebond Bob here. He drove all the way here from Ohio for that event. And then in addition to that live stream, did a bunch of other videos with us, which I think haven't posted yet. So yeah, Titebond has been very supportive of me and WWGOA, and they have been underwriting this live stream for a really, really long time, years and years and years. I'm going to take advantage of a break in the questions to do a little bit of show and tell. So if you saw the showcase, and if you didn't, you can go back and watch it. Max put the link up. If you saw the showcase, you saw me make a river table by carving out the river with the Arbortex system and then pouring epoxy in it. So one, let me show you that. So just like, I don't know, whatever, philosophically, procedurally, I really like this thing. I've never done a typical river table. A typical river table would be you take 2 slabs, you get them a few inches apart, and then you pour epoxy in between the live edges. So with this one, there's still material there. That was 1 white oak slab. I freehand drew a river, and then I used the power carver in order to get that material out. And then I filled it with epoxy. So that's covered on that showcase. You can see how that went. And I left a little island. What I really wanted to show you, though, because I love these things, are these legs. I got legs, and I know how to use them. So people are going to ask, these legs are from a company called Bear, B-E-A-R, Hollow, Bear Hollow Supply. And they have them in a variety of different sizes. They look like cast iron, but they're cast aluminum. But they've got this great, just uber traditional look. You can put the connecting rod in between them or not. I like doing it. It stiffens the whole assembly up. So then that and that. Isn't that crazy cool? I love the look. And I first found these guys, if you're not aware, I wrote a book about working with live edge slabs that released a couple years ago. So I first found this company when I did a dining room table, a book match slab dining room table, and this style of leg in a bigger scale is what I put under that one. So I just love them. And I love that I don't have to make a wooden base. And I love the real just kind of old-fashioned cast iron look it gives to the project. So that is white oak that's got the river in it. That's going to go on one of these bases. Then also, the other manufacturer we worked with for the showcase was Fuji. And so for Fuji, I sprayed finish. This takes us back to Aquacoat. This is quarter sawn white oak. See the fleck right there? It's a beautiful slab. So this got top coated with Aquacoat. This will also end up living on one of those bases. And I think especially with the table I did was walnut, the complement between white oak and the black base, walnut and the black base. Cherry would look great on top of these. And this is not, sorry, this is not a commercial for Bear Hollow Supply. I'm just telling you about this because I love these legs and I think they're unique and a little bit different. You know, it gets you away from hairpin legs that are so ubiquitous on live edge slab work these days. So yeah, it's cool. It's got a little Singer sewing machine vibe going there. Good thing I have a little coffee left. Let me wash down whatever is hanging out. So one more time. The legs came from Bear, like the animal, Hollow Supply, Bear Hollow Supply. These are the 18-inch tall ones, so that's a great height for like a little side table next to a couch or something. But they have a variety of different sizes. Victor says, oh, and the other thing I want to point out, so I don't forget, because we're almost out of time, Max has put the link up for this, I think it's a pretty cool pumpkin tray that I did as a project a few years ago. It's all done on the bandsaw. And if you make it out of, you know, cedar's a good choice. It's got a little orange look to it. We are, what are we? A week? What day is today? 19th. Math in my head. So we're 12 days away from Halloween. You still have time to make a pumpkin tray. So if you scroll down just a little bit, there's a banner there that says pumpkin tray. Click that and you can get that plan. It includes, I'm pretty sure there's a full-size pumpkin pattern in there that you can just glue to your material and cut. It's a fun little project. So Victor says, I'm looking to build a built-in closet system with drawers and a small walk-in closet. It has carpet, but want to keep it. Is it best practice to remove the carpet under the closet so it doesn't sag? Also, if I want to hang it all, is that going to hold up? I haven't seen many hanging drawers. I would, you know, without seeing exactly what you're fixing to do, I would be inclined to do this by building a cabinet more that's going to sit on the floor, more so than suspending a cabinet from a wall. And I would definitely take the carpet out. You want, you know, especially you're talking about whatever, plywood, melamine, whatever you're going to make it out of, plus a bunch of drawers, plus whatever you're going to put in it. That's a lot of weight. And I think what you're intuitively getting here is that if the material just sits on carpet, it's going to react funny. You know, it's going to compress weird on the carpet. The other thing is if the carpet is sitting on nail strips, tack strips, whatever those things are called, those are going to be out by the baseboard and they add a little lump right there. It's a 1/4-inch strip with a bunch of tack sticking out of it. So if you try to put the cabinet right up against the baseboard, I think it would have a tendency to pitch that whole cabinet away from the wall. So I would take the carpet out and I would take those tack strips off and make sure that you're just sitting solidly right on the floor. Odie says, Hello, George. Thanks for putting on these Q&As. I don't have any projects going at the moment, but still like to expand my knowledge whenever possible. Keep up the good work. Well, thanks for watching. And if I'm looking at numbers, you know, if 300 or 400 of you weren't currently watching, we wouldn't be able to keep doing this. So it's people watching it live and then also coming back and watching the archives later is what keeps this whole thing viable for everybody. Some of my older projects with epoxy have started to pull the wood away from the epoxy. So I don't know, I've not experienced that. I would wonder, like, you know, it's like anything, the wood's got to be fully dry, it's got to be seasoned, it's got to be acclimated to your shop. Epoxy is not going to expand and contract. Wood is. So like in this case with that river, it's part of the reason I kept the river narrow. Remember when I was talking about somebody else's table or countertop, I said expansion and contraction is lineal. So if over 12 inches, it's going to move an eighth. Over 24 inches, it's going to move a quarter. So with that narrow river, especially in quarter sawn wood, there's very little movement anyway. In that tiny narrow river, the wood that's still below the river is not going to expand to a point where it moves away from the river banks. So you have to keep those kinds of things in mind when you're going to mix those two media. So somebody on YouTube says, oh, what I just talked about. With the river table, would there not be movement issues with the half wood, half epoxy? The wood on bottom of the epoxy will move more or less than the epoxy. So yeah, no, so that, like I said, the deal there is, yes, you're right. I mean, epoxy is plastic, so there'll be no expansion and contraction there. I don't want to set this on there. So one, this is very narrow. Minimal amount of expansion available. This is quarter sawn white oak. So with quarter sawn over plain sawn, there's inherently significantly less seasonal movement. So it'll be smurferific. Sorry about that. I bought a piece of aromatic cedar. It doesn't have any smell anymore. Idea is what to do with it. 5 board feet, simple box, or, so yeah, it's, in my experience, it like oxidizes or seals over or does whatever it does, cedar. So if you do a light sanding and you re-expose the surface, you should be able to get the smell of the cedar back. I've had that same thing happen with, you can buy stuff that looks like strand board, but it's all made out of cedar. And that's a closet lining or, use it wherever you're gonna use it. And over time, it does the same thing. And with just a light sanding, it brings the smell back. All right, as always. All right, I'll just tap dance for a second. We'll see if any more questions pop up. But trying to think of upcoming, any cool upcoming woodworking things I can think of. Maker Camp was just a couple of weeks ago. If you're not familiar with that, sorry, but you've missed it, but you can look at the calendar for next year. Maker Camp is like Woodstock of the 60s meets a woodworking / metalworking / sewing event. It's in the Catskill Mountains in New York. Just Google Catskill Mountain Maker Camp. You'll find it. It's hands-on with a lot of different stuff: welding, forge, woodworking, timber framing, sewing, leatherwork. It's a really, really neat event. So that has just came and went. And other than that, I don't know. Thanksgiving's right around the corner. Christmas is coming. Are you working on gifts? I'm not. I'm way behind. All right. Well, it looks like we're set on questions. We're caught up. So don't forget to grab that pumpkin plan. That's available as a free download. And then other than that, thanks for tuning in at this oddball time and place. And we'll see you next time we do a Q&A or a technique or a project or whatever we do live. Can check us out, Max.